Honkai Star Rail finally released their part 2 Fate collab banners, which is consist of Rin and also the Gilgamesh. Rin is limited and also Gilgamesh is a free character, just like the part 1 where we already got the Saber as limited and also Archer was the free one. Now if you haven't even logged in during the part 1 celebration, then I guess you already missed the Archer. So you do have a chance to get the Archer, but you have to cost the Gilgamesh. Yes, if you already picked the Archer during the celebration banner or somewhat of a login during the banners, then I guess you can just totally choose the Gilgamesh as a collection purpose. But if you really want to think about as a vertical investment purpose for your archers, then I guess picking an archer with a multiple another dupes is going to be helpful for your case. Another important thing is that if you just somehow pair up with the Rin or the Archer, just because of according to the lore wise in a actual of original cities of Fate universe, Archer does not even going to be lie between any of us like a single target. These guys are also open up to a multi-target and also some other game mode as well. So if you are using him in a only Memory of Chaos or also Apocalyptic Shadow, which is somewhat of a best resort for your single target characters, then I guess you can even use him on your pure fiction right now. This is the thing that I already got from the beta testing. And another part is that Gilgamesh is somewhat of a way too much broken character in a beta testing, because the amount of synergy this guy would have a saber, just because of according to the lore wise, this guy can even have a multiple turns within a single cycle, which just makes you a million damage without having any of this investment. Yes, this is the thing of a, how should I put it, cycle manipulation or ultimate manipulation, what the other Chinese player and also some other expert players has been doing it with their multiple constellation or C6 character with some other good amount of vertical investment characters. For the base characters to do that, it is kind of like a way too much impressive to see, and that is the reason HSR developers are totally remove the mechanics and also nerf the Gilgamesh to a certain extent, where you can even totally extort the what the game's mechanics has been fault. This is the like a simple things what the HSR developers has already been doing. It is the some of the character having a way too much value in a beta testing, they're always going to be, so remove the buffs and also make the character balance in the name of nerfs. So you know you have to bear with it. If they don't even do these types of things to a certain characters who actually makes a broken outcome in a beta testing, near future there are another flagship characters such as this Silver Roof level 1999 and also the Feynon, some other characters such as the Achiron. This types of flagship character does not even sell very well, since your base character can even do way much more million damage without having investment. Unlike the Wuthering Waves, the limited banner in this HSR is not even considered as an immediate one, because when the part 1 banner was actually announced in their live stream kind of like 1.5 years ago, they didn't even mention that when the banner is actually going to be the end. And after in currently situation, you can totally find the banners of a Saber and also Archer if you haven't even logged in during the part 1 collaboration, and it totally pull them with your normal of actual currency, which is a Stellar Jade. Just like the Wuthering Waves was Cyberpunk already run in a certain period of time, which is a Lucia and some other Rebecca free characters, but we don't even have any idea when this collab character are going to be rerun in the futures. But for this case, we are going to get a 4 banners at the same time, and they didn't even confirm that when the banner is going to be the end, which is going to be the Saber, Gilgamesh, Rin and also our Archer. If you really want to start a new account to make one of those character E6, you can just totally do it, since this game can give you a lots of pulls, especially just getting the all those like history commission and also clearing the at least of a Jufufu or you can say Jiangfu, you are going to get at least one around of a 300 pulls. So getting a E6 character with 300 pulls, it is not impossible things to do that if you are very much of a lucky to get an early character. So with a multiple 50-50 wins, you are obligated to get that character E6 and also play it with your full mindset. Anyway, I just totally yap, which is not even related to this video and also video's topic. In this video topic, I'm going to talk about where this our new character, which is Rin and also Gilgamesh, lies between this tier list, since these tier lists are kind of like a way too much stagnated with a lots of DPS character and also lots of meta changes. What I'm trying to say here is that in our current tier list, we do have a Castoris, which is somewhat of a struggling to between in current endgame mode. I don't know Castoris is going to be somewhat of a better character in this current version. Other characters such as Silver Roof, which is a new flagship character for the election, which is also a new path into this HSR. Therefore, some other characters such as which is already released recently, Himeko Nova, she's also kind of like a making her way up into the top tier list and also making a huge amount of impact into the meta perspective. So having this like a powerhouse, it is actually interesting to see that where these two characters are going to be lies into this tier list. So for this tier list section, I'm going to choose in the Pride.gg. I already make an explanation about the tier list and what is they actually do. They don't even make tier list for the HSR, they also make tier list for the Wuthering Waves and also other multiple 13 games, which is going to be popular, and most of the time their takes is not even going to be a valid one. It creates a controversy between the certain games community. Let's see why these two characters are going to be lies behind. Since this game does have a 3 types of game mode, Memory of Chaos, Pure Fiction, Apocalyptic Shadow. Apocalyptic Shadow is kind of like a single target check, where break damage is going to be the way too much better value that you could ever find. Pure fiction AoE type of character, if the character does a AoE damage, this character going to be very much of a gated towards the pure fiction. Sometimes pure fiction specialist character does not even going to be perform memory of chaos and apocalyptic shadow. If a character which can do all those three endgame mode perfectly, then this character considered as a apex tier, and apex tier does not even going to be rely on a single meta. Yes, sometimes a character can be individually as a apex tier for the memory of chaos, but other rest of the tier are going to be dog shit. You can even see in this tier list when I'm going to check it right now. Anyway, I just really give you a little bit of an rundown how the endgames actually work, and let's see where the characters actually lies behind. First and foremost thing is that Rin is also moves up, not actually moves up, her initial position as a tier 0 for the memory of chaos, pure fiction tier 0.5 and apocalyptic shadow tier 0. So as for the pure fiction tier 0.5, I'm not seeing that why they make her as a tier 0.5 for the pure fiction and other rest of the endgame mode category as a tier 0. The main thing is that they are actually testing her. Yes, they didn't even approach her with a watch tier list, because in this tier list section, whenever they put a watch on a certain character's icon, it means that they are need to be much more testing and need to be much more checking that where this character are actually going to be valuable into that particular endgame mode or not, or into that particular of a tier list section or not. If the watch list going to be removed, the final decision might be kind of like a higher than to their position. Suppose if you see a character in a tier 1 position, then your character might be even go to a tier 0 since the testing is done and they are totally wrong into the first initial positions. And after that, sometimes when the characters totally considered as a high tier character just because of the beta testing, but when the worst tier is moved, they think that this character does not even belong this tier list. It is not even at that much of impactful into this current meta. You know what I'm trying to say here. Other character remain to the similar position, but one thing is for sure, man, Archer was our free character for the Parfum column, and it was already happened 1 year ago. This guy even to this day considered one of the best character, and right now pure fiction as a tier 0.5, which is a massive improve, because since our Rin was not even there, our Archer was doing in that time when before the Rin release was just doing the all like a single target damage, and memory of chaos does not even align what the pure fiction and apocalyptic shadow does. In pure fiction, I already mentioned AoE target, apocalyptic shadow single target, but most of the times it is a break damage DPS check. But for the memory of chaos, it most of the time consists of a single target and also multiple target. So for the Archer, sometimes memory of chaos, when it is going to be shield towards a single target, this guy is actually going to be way too much good. But for the AoE target or mix between it, this guy does not even have that much of a value in that time. But sometimes if a character is well too much established or well too much skilled enough, then this guy can even do that, which is actually an exception. Exception cannot be example. Anyway, let's see where our next character, which is a Gilgamesh, is going to be put. It is put into a 0.5. Man, I thought that he will be put into under tier 1 because the amount of nerf he actually got in a beta testing, which is actually huge. I don't know why they actually nerf it, since I already mentioned in my intro section the amount of things he actually done in the beta testing with the saber, because the amount of ultimate and also the million damage within a single cycle, it is a no joke. And that kind of things can only be done if your character does have a multiple constellation, and that character must have to be a flagship character and also with a good amount of add-ons. But for the Gilgamesh having a base copy and also for the saber with the base copy, they were kind of like a manipulating with the ultimate cycle and also deploying a huge amount of ultimate without wasting the energies, without wasting the turns, without wasting the cycles. That's the thing what these two characters were actually creating a mess into the beta testing, and for that reason I guess the developer are totally nerfing those two characters, because if they don't, the upcoming future flagship characters such as the Noah and also the Evanesia, Silverroof, Acheron, these types of character cannot even shine or outshine this collab character. Always collab character doesn't even going to be the powerful, but I am way too much shocked that Archer even to this day relevant compared to these two characters. Anyway, Saber is also goes up from tier 1.5, because in my previous position, correct me if I'm being wrong, I saw her into a tier 1.5, but currently she is positioned as a tier 0.5. Oh my god, these two characters are kind of like a partner. If one of this character fell down, this character also going to be the fell down as well, as just like the Phenon. Phenon is a partner for the Seridra. Seridra was considered as a tier 0, but when the Phenon does not even have any value for the meta perspective and also other endgame moves, Seridra was also goes down alongside with him, just like any other characters. There are way too much niche characters. If the niche characters such as the Dahlia, which is kind of like a destination for the break, if the break is actually fall, Dahlia is also going to be the fall, since outside of a break team, this woman does not even have any other team's value. Okay, let's see where the other characters actually positioned in here. I'm not seeing any of this like a changes has been happened from the previous patches. Okay, I already have too much. Let's see what the Rin Osaka's review and what's actually try to say here. First and foremost thing is the first impression is going to be the cons is way too much low. Man, I already see whenever a character cons is too much low, it means that that character somewhat have a high amount of impact into the current meta or have a high amount of feature proof value. So let's talk about the pros. First one point is going to be the definitive support for the archer, providing SP bonus and hard hitting away joint attack that perform within him. As I already mentioned before, after releasing her, pairing up with the archer not even lying going to be the single target, this guy and consider as a multi-target as well as, which is actually going to be the best one, since our Rin is way too much a specialist to give the archer of a SP, which is the main thing of the archer really required to make her unlimited blade works, or you can say unlimited bow works, to deploy a multiple single target damage to a certain enemies. That kind of things provided by the Rin. Of course, as a lore wise, see, Rin is a master and also archer is a servant of Rin. That kind of things are actually maintaining into this game as well as. For our next point, which is going to be the very impressive cell buffs that automatically shred with archer. Oh man, of course man, they do have their own of another extra special animation which can only be seen if these two characters are paired up, and that's the thing where the cell buff and also some other techniques are going to be revolved around the archer and also Rin, as long as these two characters are in a single teams. For our next point, which is going to be the forms a complete duo with archer that has a great team flexibility. So the great team flexibility that they are trying to mention in here, if you just somehow put any of those like a team with these two characters, just only two characters and the rest of the characters are going to be any of those like that, suppose dual DPS or other characters, these characters can even have a way too much flexibility just having any other teams, which makes them a good pickup, since archer is a free one, and also just pulling for the Rin, if you just somehow lost the FTT, you do have another of a chance to get a guaranteed pull for the Rin. But if you don't even have pull, I guess this character do have a way too much longer rerun than you might even thought it would be. For our next point, which is going to be the good crit damage pass for the team, making a spinning SP. So if you do have some any other DPS character who is actually SP negative or SP high SP consuming character, such as the archer, such as the immovable Luna, but after the immovable Luna and also archer, we didn't even see any of those like character who does have the higher amount of SP negative types of things. Most of the character does have a SP positive, most of the character doesn't even use the SP at the first place, such as the Castoris. And for these types of case, if you do have a SP hungry characters of a DPS versions, then you are going to get a huge amount of crit damage just because of what the Rin kit is actually providing, based on the how amount of SP that you are going to spend on a single turn or single cycle. So our next point is going to be the surprisingly good personal damage. Of course, as a sub DPS and also buffer capability, she also does have a good sub DPS damage, and pairing with the archer special animation damage, damn man, pure cinema. For our next point, which is going to be the good damage profile, makes her a good in single target and away target. Man, I don't even know why am I trying to explain these things. I already explained in my other previous points. So let's move on to the next point, which is going to be the surprisingly high toughness damage. Oh my god, high toughness damage, I guess they try to mention in here is that they don't even care about what the enemy's resistance does have to a certain extent. So all the damage they are going to do is does have a good amount of piercement. Yes, pierce damage is another things I guess this game is trying to introduce by releasing the archer and also combo with the in this current endgame mode. For our last one, which is going to be the solid vertical investment options, of course she is a support character. Each and every other support character always going to be the good vertical investment, as you already seen in my other previous other character situations, such as the Mortinex blade. Getting him with E1 going to give you a 20% respawn is a fucking no joke. For our cons is going to be virtually no use for her outside of an archer team at E0. I guess that's the point what they are trying to implement in the pros, but why they don't implement in a cons, I don't know. So at E0, I guess she is way too much gated towards your archer. Of course, as a lore wise, they are best partner for both each other. But if you just somehow able to get a V6 or a E2 or some multiple constellation, she will be way too much versatile some other characters. So investing on her to get a versatile, or you can say the more universal to other teams, I guess it is going to be very much of a bad decision, since other characters who can even have a way multiple universe amplification just by not even have a multiple constellations, such as an example of a Sirene, as an example of our Mortinex Darkness Blade, which was released recently. For our next point, which is going to be the personal damage, amps are locked behind the Eidolons. Amplification is locked behind the Eidolons. Of course, this is the limited characters in every other gacha game, always going to be the tent towards your vertical invasion or some other like multiple cons. If you don't even provide them multiple cons, I guess you are going to have a way too much force decision, making them use a good amount of time. For our next point, which is going to be you cannot escape speed tuning if you want to consistent joint attacks. The more amount of turns she actually have in a single cycle, the more amount of joint attack are going to be done, which is kind of like a follow-up attack what the archer is actually do, and that's the thing what makes archer a single target alongside with the AoE target. And if the Rin doesn't even have that much of a high speed, I guess you are going to have a hard time to maintain the joint attack, and your archer cannot even have a high value to your pure fiction and also some other AoE targets damage. So I guess this is like a review section for the built-in teams. They already mentioned that these guys always going to be the Rin Tosaka's best installed partner if you just somehow get her with the E0. But with multiple constellations, she's not going to be lies only behind the archer. She can even have other option as well. So having to use her with the universal things and also making her universal just by having a multiple constellation, wasting her pools, is a kind of like a worst decision that you might even ever made into this game. So that's all for this like Rin part. Let's move on to our Gilgamesh part. What kind of things they already mentioned into the review section. Oh my god, as you can see that the cons is way too much higher than the Rin. That means this guy nerf does have the impact on his gameplay style after the final release. Let's see what kind of pros they already mentioned in here. Definitive dual DPS and support for Saber, providing additional energy, 2x final ultimate multiplier for her, and also brand new joint follow-up attack with Saber. As you already know, that follow-up attack is kind of like a new things, or joint follow-up attack kind of like a new things which only can be happen for certain characters with the certain reactions, and this certain interaction can only be happen if you just somehow meet the criteria. For this kind of like a joint attack, only this Fate character, which is going to be consist of Archer Rin and also the Saber Gilgamesh, and this joint attack is somewhat of a valuable, and this is the things what that makes these two characters somewhat of unique and also have some kind of like a buffs that you might not even ever have. And what the things they actually try to mention in here is going to be the ultimate energy generation. Yes, Saber is actually an ultimate hungry character, but if you just somehow meet her criteria, since her passive can even have fill up the full amount of ultimate if she does have the 50% ultimate, or if she just somehow able to generate the 50% ultimate. That's the thing what the things actually helps by the Gilgamesh when this guy is actually on the off field. So for our next point, which is going to be the excellent passive boss for the high max energy characters. So in our games, we do have a max energy stack characters such as the Evanesia, Midgenti, sorry my bad, it is the Argenti, and also the none other than the Saber herself. So if you just somehow able to use these guys from other teams, I guess you are going to have a huge amount of use case, because not even having this guy in an on field and being an off field, giving an energy recharge without using the SP and some other things, is a way amount of higher value that you could ever have. But the character that this guy actually going to be benefited, this guy doesn't even have any of this like a value into the current bundle. So if you just somehow able to use them into this current version, you are going to be fall behind way too much, and you might not even clear the end game mode with a full fill of a amount of time. For our next point, which is going to be the good damage profile for the teams he is good in. Of course, as they already mentioned in their previous 2 points, which is going to be the max energy character, this guy is a phenomenal for the Saber joint attack and also some other self buff, personal buff is also going to be the phenomenal. But if the future any next new character which is a heavy energy requirement character can even deploy there, I guess this guy also going to be has a huge amount of value in that time. But after currently in right position, this guy playing a kind of like a niche role compared to a universal role. For the next point, which is going to be the built-in personal defense ignore. Oh man, the thing that they actually try to mention in here is going to be the built-in personal defense ignore, means that whenever this guy actually do the damage, certain extent of a damage are going to be ignore the defense to a certain enemies, and also your personal damage is going to be the higher. But this defense ignore does not even going to be help when the Saber is actually doing the damage. You have to remember that before just considering this guy is a most powerful broken characters. For our next point, which is going to be the surprising high toughness damage, same thing as our Rin, as I already mentioned before, completely SP neutral. Of course, this is the thing that I already mentioned in my other point, is that you don't even have to be on field, you don't even have to use your SP, just being on the team, this guy just use the chain attack and also some other things, and your character who is actually a high amount of energy hungry, this guy will actually also going to give you a huge amount of generation. For our next point, which is going to be the has free stacking speed above their charges from ally actions. Oh my god, so the amount of action your ally can even do that, the more speed he's actually going to have. Oh, true king indeed. According to the lore wise, your character doing all the chorus, he's actually getting the benefit. Oh my god. For our next point, which is going to be the very high damage multipliers and extra self buffs on his role. Similar thing as well as nothing to be mentioned in here. Final point is going to be free to claim on patch 4.4. So after 4.4, you cannot even claim like the Archer one. For the cons, man, we do have a lots of points. Which is first point is going to be the not a super competitive main DPS without any launch. I don't know what they are trying to mean by here. Not a super competitive main DPS without any launch. Isn't that a pro? Since we don't even need a launch to make him competitive. I don't know what they're trying to say here. If you know, just totally let me know in the comment section. For our next point, which is going to be the does not make the Saber teams easier to play, quite the opposite. For the beta testing, when these two characters are totally massacring the whole over endgame modes and also some mocking the other top tier DPS characters, they nerf it and somewhat these pros are becoming a cons. Right now, playing with the Saber and also Gilgamesh is kind of like a hard to do that, or you can say hard to pull off. For our next point, which is going to be the energy economy, fluctuate and depends on the amount of energy his allies are expending. I don't know what they are trying to say here. You can, if you already know that, let me know in the comment section. For the next one, which is going to be has a mandatory ramp up period before he can start his skills. I guess the point that they are trying to make in here, he does really require a high amount of cooldown whenever he refreshes his skills and also some other chain attacks. Man, this is the cons. This is the cons. For our last point, which is going to be the heinous fluctuating and combat speed values human lightning lot. But sorry man, these cons is kind of like a dual standard type, so which is actually hard for me to understand. If you already understand, you can let me know in the comment section. I guess that's all for this like a part. Let's see where they actually try to give us idea for the team building section. For the team building section, we do have a, of course, best start is going to be the Saber, Gilgamesh. These two are going to give a joint attack and other stuff. If you really want to play him with a main DPS role, just playing him with the best start characters such as the Mortinex Blade and also the Ashville and also the Danheg or Preservation Danheg. These two characters with the Mortinex Blade and also Ashville, these guys are considered as a wheelchair team in current position of the HSR. So if you just somehow able to get it, these two guys can even make any of those DPS character with a high amount of potential damage that you might not ever seen on that part. Okay, that's all for this like a tier list part. I know that this video is just totally way too much longer than ever. If you already stick to the last point of it, all I wanted to say is that thank you man. Anyway, that's all for this like a tier list. If you like it, leave a like. If you do have any more questions regarding their position into this current tier position, you can totally let me know, and also let me know in your comments where they should be belong into this tier list.